Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of What's Ahead. Today I have here with me Sai. He's currently doing his PhD from UC Santa Cruz. So, hi Sai, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. Hi Sunidhi. I'm Sai Siddhartha. I'm a second year PhD student at UC Santa Cruz. I work in the GUI lab, which is called the Gaming User Intelligence and Interaction Lab, like advised by Dr. Maggie Saif Al Nazir. In terms of work, I primarily study how religion, culture kind of interact with video games. So it's more on the human-computer side, human-computer interaction side of the things. Yeah, that's pretty much me. But yeah, I'm also a Thapar alumni, graduated in 2020. So that's pretty much a little gist about myself, I guess.
So, fun fact, me and Sai, I'm still in college, but we both went to the same college. Would you like to elaborate on the internships that you did in your first, second, third, and fourth year of undergrad?
Right. Yeah, I think something which is very pivotal and important for me was doing my internships. So I did manage to, like, luckily, or however you want to term it, but I did manage to have an internship across all 4 years of my undergrad. For the first year of my internship, I volunteered at a nonprofit called Srishti in the Indian Institute of Management at Ahmedabad. So I worked with a professor called Dr. Anil Gupta, who was running this cohort of engineering students and from students from different backgrounds to come and solve grassroots problems. So during that time, I went ahead to develop Android applications because my skill was very limited. I was still an first year undergrad at that point, and all I knew was how to build a few Android apps. So I built an Android app for farmers where they could log in data points such as color of the leaves, how much of water, and different metrics associated with plant growth. They could kind of like work with scientists to kind of improve their yield. So that's what I did in my first year. That kind of pushed me to work more on understanding grassroots level problems and using computer technology or like any kind of technology to kind of solve them. One problem we saw there was how these wild cattle come and eat down crops. So I had my roommate with me, Tanuj, who was also in the internship actually. So we both came back and we kind of developed a solution where we had computer vision to solve that, and that got some traction. And in that process, I interned in my second year in a robotics company as a computer vision like intern. It was called Inventor Robotics. It's Balaji Vishwanathan's company from Kora. People know him. So yeah, I interned there. There I met a few friends. I networked a little, and then I realized that it's possible to kind of like intern abroad during your undergrad. So I met some students from Georgia Tech who are interning in the company, and they mentioned that there are professors who do hire summer scholars for summer internships, and that got me thinking. And the third year of my undergrad, I applied to Georgia Tech. I did my internship in Atlanta. So I flew from Patiala to Atlanta to do three months of internship in Atlanta. And from there, a lot of work I did, I kind of saw some similar work in Indian Institute of Science, or a little different, but like using graph theory and stuff like that. I applied there. For my final year of internship, I did it in Indian Institute of Science. The cool thing with Thapar is you can do like 6 months of internship. So I did my 6 months in Indian Institute of Science. I think during my 4 years of undergrad, kind of had these different variety of experiences across different places. So it was just pretty fun. Yeah.
Right. What was your process of getting the internship right? So, like a lot of people, they don't really know how to apply for these kind of internships.
Right. Yeah, I think this is a question I get very common, like when I go meet someone or someone new. I think my fundamental advice is to stay really ahead of the game. Like you have to know what kind of internships you want to do. Um, don't expect that it'll come onto your plate, but it's actually you cooking your meal and serving it yourself. I think just staying really ahead of the game in terms of having it very clearly laid out, saying that, okay, I want to do an internship in these kind of companies like computer vision internships, then kind of scaling it down, saying that, okay, am I going to work in a company like Nvidia or Google as a computer vision intern? Am I there? Is my skill level there? Is my caliber there? If not, what are the second set of companies or third set of companies I should be looking forward to? And really planning yourself and curating your work experience And I'm really coming from a startup point of view. Definitely, I wouldn't deny the data structure algorithm game which goes around, and which is pivotal and important to back a lot of internships. Assuming that is not the direction you want to go, the other way around is for possibly like what I did. It's like a less a path less traveled, but it still gives you something at the end. So I think that's how I would go about it. Yeah.
Right. So also like why do people like who are applying abroad for masters or PhD prefer research internships over commercial internships?
I think it's a matter of opportunity too. Like, if you're coming abroad, you will see a lot of people. There's this know-how saying that you have to have a research portfolio and have a good research background and aptitude for research, which is fair. Like if you're applying for a PhD, it is really important to show that research aptitude and that research interest as such. And in that process, how do you show that? Like, how do you create a tangible way to tell someone that I am interested in research? And research internships are something which add credit and which add authenticity to the fact that you are interested in research. I think that is what is important, especially that is why I would prefer to do a research internship if my ultimate goal is to do research abroad. But I think again, it really boils down to knowing that you're coming abroad to do research, or you want to do a master's just to improve your job prospects. Then it doesn't really matter where you do work, as long as you're able to create a very convincing narrative in terms of why you're interested in a master's program. I think that's where that why a research internship sometimes gets a little more weight over a regular internship, especially for applying for research-based programs. Yeah, and it sticks with the narrative, right? Like I did a research internship with a professor on topic XYZ, and when I'm applying to a university, I can say that, oh, there are a set of current existing professors who are already working on it. So that creates some common ground which you can talk about, right? So I think that's where there's a little more advantage. So yeah, that's how I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's wonderfully put. Right. So another thing that I wanted to ask was, did you work on your research papers separately or were they like a part of your internship?
Yeah, it's pretty surprising. I never got a research paper out of my internships. Like though I did intern. And I think it's not just me. I've seen my peers also. The number of people who have converted their research internships to papers is it's very less. Like of you, because if you say an internship is for 3 months, it's very hard to like really publish in 3 months. So
Yeah.
that's why 6 months makes sense. But it's not like always you get a paper out of 6 months of time, right? So you take time to adjust to the field and just trying to understand. Most of the time, you're contributing to someone's project. So I did not get a paper, unfortunately, from any of my internships. All my research papers, which have come through in undergrad, have come out of these internships. They've come from like my personal interests in publishing papers. So yeah, I think but I would recommend always to push to publish in your internship if it's possible. But then if it's not, then you you can always like come out and do it on your own too. Yeah.
And like would you tell like a little bit about the process of how did you publish your research papers?
Right. I think the two things. I think one thing is knowing where to publish is something which
Yeah.
is very important. I think even before you publish, you should have it on your fingertips. Like, acha, these are conferences or venues I want to publish, which will give me reputation. And then there are some conferences which are like you can just write, you can ask ChatGPT to write something and it'll get accepted. Like they don't care, right?
Mhm.
So
I think
so
that's
you want to
something
put
even
in
I
effort.
have seen a lot. Like a lot of people don't know where to publish and they just come up with research papers and publish it anywhere and they think they're done with the job, but instead like they haven't really like
Yeah.
done good work, right?
Yeah, I think the process of publishing a research paper now has become like a verb and a noun. Oh, I have published, I have a research paper. So that's a verb and that's a noun. But that's not how it works. There's a lot more context to these two words, right? So I think people need to dive into that context. And I wouldn't blame students. I think it's possibly how Indian academia is right now structured. I can see it changing, but the whole I want to publish in the SCI impact factor journal thing with the faculty, you would publish in anything. There's like this whole underground thing where you can publish anywhere, right? But I think the way I did this mistake. I published in two conferences, which I don't even want to talk about. Like I don't even remember the what I wrote there. It's very bad. But you slowly realize that quality papers come from top conferences. Like there are a set of you can just type top conferences for HCI, and you will see those 10 conferences, and they're much more valued across the world. These conferences are very much valued. So it's my I think as an undergrad, if you do not have great faculty support in your university who have consistently published in a conference like Kai or ACM Multimedia or Kai Play or whatever, I think a great way to start is all of these conferences have student game design competitions, workshops, and then like undergrad symposiums where only undergrads are allowed to publish. I figured that out just before I graduated. So then I started publishing in ACM Multimedia as a workshop paper. In IEEE Globecom, which is a good conference, I published a full paper. But fundamentally, what I'm trying to say is that try to be with those set of people who are reputed in their field, and like try to, even if your contribution is small, even if it's a poster, but be there. Like that value is much more than just publishing in any conference which nobody even knows about, right? So I think making significant contributions, even if it's small, will add more value. So just like, for example, from HCI perspective, I know CSCW, Kai Play, ACM Multimedia, IUI. So these are like top conferences which people look. So you say that you have a workshop paper here, I will still listen to you instead of saying, Sai, I had a paper in a conference called ICASCCP, which nobody knows on this planet is. Right. So yeah, creating that value proposition for yourself kind of helps, I feel. Yeah.
Right. So you've applied twice, right? So what was the difference in both the times? What were some of the mistakes that you did the first time that you sort of rectified the second time you were applying?
For my
Yes.
grad school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did apply for 2 cycles in grad school. I applied for 2020, which is like just after I graduated, like immediately after I graduated, and that was prime COVID. And then I applied again for 2021. So I think the two fundamental differences were in my first applications, I did get a bunch of admits, like I did get from University of Maryland, College Park, University of Southern California. But I wasn't still like so happy with these because Georgia Tech kind of rejected me, which was pretty surprising because I did an internship in Georgia Tech myself, and that was like something so on my face, like something is wrong. But then I kind of had to introspect in terms of like what is wrong. I think the primary difference was when I was applying for my first set of applications, I was focusing on computer vision, AI, ML, and those were the kind of areas I was applying for, and that to a PhD and certain masters. But then when I kind of looked back and introspected, am I really that good to get a PhD admit for a computer vision role or a machine learning role? I realized that maybe I'm not there yet. I'm good in following tutorials and converting it into a context which is applicable to the society, right? But I'm not leading that field, or I'm not contributing significantly to computer vision, but I'm contributing to another field using computer vision. So that interdisciplinary nature was my strength, which I didn't recognize in my first applications. And I was heavily focused on thinking that I'm a good computer vision researcher, but I wasn't. I was just a good replicator of computer vision research. I could read a paper and replicate that result, but not really push a new algorithm into the picture. So it was fair for PhD applications to reject me because they didn't see that merit in me. So the second set of applications, what I did is, okay, I am not a computer vision, but I work in an interdisciplinary field like HCI, where I can use different domain knowledge to create narratives, create stories, which I did. Like I built like my research papers were for agriculture and computer vision, or physical abuse, how to like negotiate physical abuse through computer vision. So I always used AI/ML products in games or in fashion and things like that. Then that narrative is what I brought in, saying that I want to work in HCI, human computer interaction, because I'm able to connect interdisciplinary fields which to make tangible products. So that realization kind of shifted all my applications towards robotics, because I worked in a robotics startup. So robotics, HCI. So once it became these areas, I got like much better admits, like from Georgia Tech, University of Adelaide for UCSC, which is where I am. I got from Southern California, Maryland, College Park. So that kind of like helped me out a little, just to realize your strength and making sure your SOP speaks out your strength rather than just what you did, right? So I think
Right. Yeah.
diving into the lines of what you did kind of helps you a little more. Yeah.
Right. And like, would you like to talk about the timeline of submitting the applications and like basically the timeline of applying to the US, like the SOP, GRE, LORs, everything?
Yeah, so I'm going to come from an assumption. People will want to apply straight after their undergrad, like you're done with your undergrad and now you want to apply. So right, so you will graduate somewhere in May, June. That's when your last day of university will be. So after June 30th, you're done with Hopper. And it's kind of very weird feeling, but then that's when, and in August, somewhere in the end of August, that's where US starts their classes, right? So you want to have admits, everything before. So let's say, like, if I want to graduate, I would recommend people to give their GRE by mid-November or early as possible. To be honest, that's a score that's going to stay for 2 years, right? So just give it and keep it with you, right? So the GRE and TOEFL just be done as soon as possible. That's my recommendation, because if something goes wrong, you can take a second shot at it. That's my recommendation. But people generally give it at the end of October or mid of October, September. That's the general trend, but there's no real hard rule. I gave it at the end of November. So these are different tricky situations. So but give it as early as possible. I wish I gave it as early as possible so I could have had a second shot at it. But yeah, whatever. But then the more important thing is getting your SOPs and LORs out, right? So I think starting from October, that's where you need to start churning your SOPs, like really have a draft ready by say 10th of October, and then start sending it out to people one at a time, get feedback. Your first SOP and your last SOP should be absolutely different. Unless you're a great writer, that's a different story. But as a mediocre writer like me, I really needed some iterations. I worked with a few people to understand where I can tune my SOP, really convey my story, convey my strength. I would give, so December 15th, it can be a rough average deadline. Like all universities can say that. You can say that some do on December 6th, some do on January 6th, whatever. But you can say December 15th can be like a mental deadline for you, saying that by today I need to finish all my applications.
Yeah.
I would advise to give your faculty at least 1 month to do their LORs. Like they will get a lot of people applying. So give them at least 1 month. So November 15th, kind of send out your application, send out your faculty requests for LORs. You don't need to finish your application. You can just click on in the application, you can send these requests and there you go. So give them like 1 month span. So I think that is where, and by November, you'll have all your SOPs done, LORs done, and hopefully take a little cushion and then apply, like customize your SOPs to each faculty and I mean, each university for masters. And then go for that. I think so by December 15th, you might want to be done with everything. After that, you will get your admissions in April, March, May, somewhere around that. Then you'll hodgepodge have to apply for your visa and everything goes well on 30th or 31st of August, you should start class in the United States. So yeah, I think that's how it works ahead. Yeah.
Right. I think that's great. And like people would want to know about the accommodation and living cost of doing masters or PhD in the US. So can you talk a little
Right.
bit about that? Yes.
Yeah, I'll speak from a PhD perspective first, and then my whatever information I have on the masters, I'll throw that in.
Right.
From a PhD perspective, if you're doing a PhD in a reputed university, you generally do not have to pay anything. Like you don't have fees, like you don't have tuition fees, you don't pay insurance, everything is covered. And over and above that, they give you a stipend for like your rent and your food and stuff like that. So I think, to be honest, I get around 2.3, 2.4K per month, like $2,400 basically, and that kind of covers my accommodation, and it's very less. Like you live paycheck to paycheck. Like almost 80% of your income goes for rent, right? So you live paycheck to paycheck, but still, like, it's not like a burn on your pocket, because you don't pay for your fees and you don't pay for your so anything above that is just like, you can say that it's like stipends basically. That's how a PhD works in most good universities. And I come from like a government university, right? University of California. It's a state university, so stipends are comparatively lower compared to like private universities like Cornell's or CMU's and stuff like that. From a master's perspective, you do have to pay your fee, which varies from university to university, and it can turn out expensive. Not like letting it go, but and then you have to care for your accommodation and stuff. You have to pay it out of your pockets, right? So you can estimate something like around $12,000 to $15,000 if you live like a very miser life like me. You can finish it off quickly in those budgets. Fees will depend on universities. But what I can suggest is that you can always apply for RA-ships and TA-ships, which might help you pay your monthly rent and or sometimes even give you fee concessions also. So that's something you need to be proactive and look forward to apply for. So Yeah, so that's how the financial stuff for a PhD. I'm very lucky that I don't pay much, or I don't pay anything apart from my own luxury. But I really don't pay anything. But yeah, that's how I see it. The difference between a PhD and master's financially, though. Yeah, but the thing is, you graduate earlier as a master's student, right? Then you'll start earning thrice as quick as us. So there's a little advantage there. Yeah.
So there are pros and cons to both.
Pros and cons, absolutely. Yeah, it depends on what your interests are. Like I did have good master's admits, but I still chose a PhD. I had master's admits in better universities, and like I had from Cornell and Georgia Tech, but I still chose UCSC for multiple reasons. Like one, it's a PhD, and in my department, it's a very famous university. So those are the factors. The various factors kind of come into picture there. Yeah.
Right, that's great. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. I think it was pretty informative. People who must be listening must have gotten a lot out of it. And thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me.